Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up, stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
This is Antonio Moore from the Griot and Tone Talks, where we're coming with a new series where we're going to cross economics, politics, and wealth in a way that allows us to see news of the day in a whole new way. So let's start off the series by just talking billionaires. You have Jay-Z, billionaire from a media mogul empire. Just recently, he's been in the news for the NFL partnership scandal, along with a recent statement where he basically said that people who come from single-parent households have a higher propensity to be adverse to police. I don't know if that makes sense. Then you have billionaire Byron Allen. Byron Allen is in the news for the Supreme Court case where challenges to the Civil Rights Act of 1866 are being brought by Comcast. Both of these men need to be analyzed for us to have a true understanding of what wealth looks like in America. So let's talk billionaires and actually contrast and compare. All wealth ain't the same. When you're 100% black owned in large part, what ends up happening is that outside of your wealth, you're able to have political statements that might not be in line with what white capital wants to hear. When we look over at Byron Allen, this Civil Rights Act of 1866 being brought in the Supreme Court is a direct aversion, a challenge to white power. When we look at Jay-Z, we have to ask the question, what is the NFL partnership and why did you enter it? Let's look and break down these two men's wealth and start to ask the question. So let's just have the discussion and contrast billionaires and start to ask the question, what's the difference between being in partnership with white wealth versus being 100% black owned? When we look at Jay-Z, much of his wealth is a combination of partnerships with white capital. When we start off, $300 million of it is ace of spades. The next $200 million is cash investments, a third of which is an Uber investment, and a part of a company doesn't give you any control. The next section, when we look, is $100 million with Tidal, which is a partnership with Sprint. Duce is a partnership with Bacardi, that's $100 million. $75 million is music catalog, $70 million is art, and $50 million is real estate. When we start to ask the question, what does it mean when black billionaires are in partnership with white capital? Can they do black politics? Let's contrast that with Byron Allen, who over the last few years has done partnerships that put him in rare air. We start off with 7 channels from AT&T, who might have a valuation of $1 billion in and of themselves. We look at the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel is a $1 billion property. We look at the channels he just acquired from Bayou, which is 4 channels for $165 million. And also the acquisition of the sports package from Disney. What you have in Byron Allen is largely 100% black owned wealth. So as Byron Allen, along with Black America, brings about a case that challenges Comcast, this is a Supreme Court case being heard in November. It is a challenge to the Civil Rights Act of 1866, a set of laws meant to allow the descendants of slavery to do contracting and business that now can be used by anyone that is non-white or non-Indian. I think in some ways what we start to see is the understanding that part of what allows Allen to do that, to challenge capital, is the fact that his capital is 100% black owned. In many ways, when we start to look at properties, Allen may be among the wealthiest blacks in the history of the nation. For all of us, what we start to understand is that billionaires must be billionaires for all of us or not at all. Now myself, my preference is a black middle class over all of it. I've said that over and over. But if we are going to have billionaires, we need our billionaires to be our billionaires. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 is being heard November 13th in the Supreme Court. I advise everyone to pay attention because it is the difference between having a billionaire that owns part of things versus a billionaire that owns all of it.
Good morning. Good morning, Informed Class. Welcome to the Eric Dawson Show.
Welcome,
it's
guys.
Thursday morning, and our Diane, the queen of the show, is on assignment. I mean, she's doing something critical. It's good to see you, Eric.
Hey, man, good to
I'm
be
glad you
seen.
led with that this morning. That's reality.
It is reality.
So when we talk about this illusion of this entertainment class, you know, the celebrity class that I say it's bogus, it's not the celebrity class that we understand.
Right.
That really value black power, really value black ownership. Like, you know, when people talk about James Brown, I said, did you know James Brown owned half of the radio stations in the South?
Yeah.
Did you know they bankrupted him Did you know they destroyed him? Did you know they changed the laws so
We
he
don't
wouldn't
have
have
a
that?
clear understanding of
They don't
power.
understand. They don't. We don't.
We it's an illusion
Right.
of inclusion, right? An illusion of power.
Right.
We have seats, but we don't have power.
I don't even know if
Whether
we have
talk
seats
about
anymore.
well, we got seats. People are sitting there. They're sitting
I
there.
was saying something different.
No,
but I got what you're saying.
they're
I'm saying
sitting there,
something
right? So
different.
when
Yeah,
we
I'm saying
look and we
something
see them there, we see those black faces there. We assume we have power, but we don't.
Yeah. It was something that I saw on my Twitter page. You know, I'm learning how to use Twitter a little bit. I'm getting better.
Right.
It'll take me about a year. You know me, Eric. It always takes me about a year. You're like 30 years ahead of me on these things. But anyway, I saw this young lady talking about, you know, about diversity. And she was talking about diversity. She was talking about inclusion, and I didn't understand it. I mean, why are we talking about diversity when we should be talking about black ownership, real black ownership?
Yeah.
We keep using these code words to make everybody else feel good, like diversity officer, like when corporations hire diversity officers.
Yeah.
That's a non-essential job. That doesn't really bring any value. It doesn't bring anything. So I'm always curious about that. And this young lady was having a conversation about the fact that we need more diversity. We need more people on corporate boards. Why? No.
Right.
I'm saying, why didn't they just put you on the corporate board?
Well,
you're a
but-
consumer class. They know who you are.
Well, but again, it is to make us feel comfortable, Kevin. So we have no ownership.
Yeah.
We don't own anything. But the idea is to make us feel comfortable because we see people there. And again, that's why, you know, part of the intro is with Ayanna Pressley saying no more black faces without black voices. Not just in politics, Kevin, but everywhere. So people who celebrate Jay-Z,
yeah.
right, and what Jay-Z did, the deal that he brokered with the NFL, the idea is, we got a black face there. But do we really have a black voice? Say, Byron Allen, black voice.
What black voice? He's at the Supreme Court fighting for something
Jay-Z,
that is
black face.
critically important. Yeah, black face,
face.
black voice.
Black voice.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
See, when we look in our politics, we have black faces, no black voices.
Well, you know, one of the
when we
things
look
that-
in our business,
That's true.
we got black faces, no black voices.
None. Not at
No
all.
more black faces without black voices.
Yeah, we got black people in Congress. black faces, no black voices. We got to use that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Do you understand what I'm
I
saying?
do, I understand.
And so when I saw that clip,
I
I
understand.
said we got to lead
I
with the clip
understand.
because no matter what it is that we are talking about here, you know, we have to begin to distinguish black faces from black voices.
It's very true. And we got a lot of black faces and
A lot
no
of
black
them,
voices.
Kev.
God
Some
damn.
of them ugly.
Oh, horrible. I mean, they just look and they just be talking away, and you're like, and you know, it's
No
just like
power,
when they
no
had
nothing.
the P Diddy. You know, you know, always when I say these names, what is his real name? Sean Combs.
Sean Combs.
I'm going to call him Sean Combs. When Sean Combs did the special the other day, I mean the conference that he did the other day, and all of those people were up there talking, right? None of them knew what they were talking about.
Right.
It was just emotional babble. Like they didn't understand the issue of reparations. They didn't understand anything.
Nothing.
They didn't understand. I mean, I give Killer Mike a little credit, but sometimes he's way off base. And I'm like, you know, you need to do a little bit more homework. Even though he sat down with Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, I think he's trying to get there. But they shouldn't be talking. They should be someplace doing some homework.
Right.
You know, and I was a little disturbed by that whole, you know, thing that they did, you know, and I just didn't like it. I think it sets us back years when you have those kinds of black people on the stage talking about issues, critical issues like racial wealth gap. But they don't really understand it. They didn't read any of it. You know, or when they're talking about reparations, they didn't read any of it. When they really try to narrow our history and what's happening in this country right now in some obscure way to get you to think that they're doing something important for you. And they're not doing anything important for you.
Go, caller.
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Eric. How y'all doing?
Hey, my brother.
How are you?
I'm great, man. How you guys doing?
I'm
Doing
doing
well.
fine.
Hey, Farrakhan, when am I gonna get that graphic for you, man? I want to see your beautiful logo up
You know
there.
what? I've been looking for it all week in my phone, like from the guy that did it, and I can't find it in my emails. That's why it's been taking me so long.
So for
I found, I'm sorry, I guess I don't want to waste your time on the show about it, but I found like the separate design. I didn't actually the one together design.
Right.
I did it.
So look,
So
you're never wasting my time. You're never wasting time, right? The idea of this show is to inform, engage, and empower, right? And what we want to do is promote small businesses as well in the process. And, as often as I can, I talk about, your skillfulness as a master barber. Not just a barber, but a master barber.
And plus, he uses his barbershop to educate and inform people.
Yes, he does.
Which is very important.
Absolutely.
I don't even know. Well, I don't go to barbershops anymore, but I grew up in a barbershop like Farrakhan's. Mm-hmm. It was my pleasure to go get a haircut at my barbershop.
Absolutely.
I stayed there too long. I used to have to tell people, like, look, I'm here too long.
Go.
I got to go. But we started talking about politics and family and life and women and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, the Revolt Summit, Tamisha. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Tamisha.
So what's going on, Farrakhan?
Right. No, I was calling up just about what Kevin was just talking about, the Revolt Summit. I finally got to watch it. I've been talking about it all week. That was an hour and a half of purity babble.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it was great to see black folks talking about something, but the number one problem I saw with that is nobody had anything. None of the people on that stage had an organization or anything that once they got off that stage, they could bring people back to and say, let's do something. And, it was just talk.
Right.
Because everybody up there had an opinion, but nobody had an organization. Nobody had something to give to anyone else to make a movement happen.
So Farrakhan,
It was just talking about it.
we're noticing here, especially in the last op-ed that was done in NJ.com, that a lot of the lexicon that is being developed here by the informed class is being used, right? So one of the things now that I really want to embrace in its fullest, and so I want to begin to define it. To you, what does that term mean? Black faces with no black voices. See, because when you
guys said it earlier on the show, my thought was the problem with black faces with no black voices. You also don't have enough black support. See, you can have black faces, there's a billion of us on the planet, right? A billion plus. But the problem becomes that we're not supporting each other. So how are you going to have a black voice, and then that guy is sitting there like, yeah, but y'all ain't doing nothing. Y'all not standing behind me. Y'all not supporting me. I used to listen to Dick Gregory say that. It was like, I could come to these things all day, but y'all don't even want to pay to come into these events. Y'all don't put any money behind the reason. I remember watching him one day, and he said, I read 18 papers a day, right, that he gets subscriptions to. But if y'all don't want to pay me, how am I going to pay for these subscriptions?
Right.
Yeah.
If you're not putting any muscle behind those black voices, how are they going to shine?
Or we choose the right,
That's our problem.
or we choose the wrong voices to represent us.
Right.
Right.
So I think that there are two separate issues
Yeah.
here, right? One is identifying the black faces, the black voices from just the black faces, right? And then we have to be about the business of eliminating those people who are just holding up space, right? Those black faces.
And
who
that's what that Revolt Summit was like. It was a lot of black voices, right? But we didn't choose them. And that's the other problem. If we get our leadership by the people that have been holding us down, how are we going to get anywhere? If the people that they back up are who we now support, we're never going to get anywhere. If your enemy is backing somebody up, that person can't possibly be good for you.
Right. And what we
That's our other problem.
right, and what we see right now in government is, whether we talk about nationally, internationally, and I want to talk a little bit about Netanyahu and the trouble he's in right now,
And
right?
Trudeau in Canada.
And Trudeau in Canada. We talk
and,
about
and how Trudeau actually set the standard of what you're supposed to do when you're wrong.
right.
I'm going to get to that. Go ahead. I'm
So
gonna stop.
so
Sit back and listen so everybody can hear.
all right,
okay,
thank
sir.
you.
No problem.
So when we talk about choosing our leaders, right, who we want to represent us, we have to first understand whether we're being represented, Kevin, whether our interests are being represented. If they're not, we have to be proactive in kicking them out. I mean, and I love what you say
Kick them off the island.
If they're not going, we're gone.
Yeah, right.
And not just here, but everywhere around the world.
Globe. Yeah.
So people are realizing that if they're not gone, we're gone, and we want to survive. So we got to kick them off the island. So when you look at that summit, it's an embarrassment.
Well,
when you see that there are people who have injected themselves in a conversation about you, right? And they don't give a damn about you.
And don't understand what they're talking about.
I mean,
listen, individually, they might be doing something that might be important to a group of people.
Right.
So I'm not going to disqualify that. They might be doing something like Renee said, they're doing something in Atlanta, right? They might be doing something individually in Atlanta that might be helping some individual people. Mm-hmm. We give them that. But when it comes to talking about the complexities of these issues, when you're trying to really drill down on what is absolutely important for our survival, they're not the best examples to be doing that. There should have been an economist on that stage.
So why do they feel comfortable doing it?
You know why? Because it's all emotionalism. See, that whole thing, if you really watch it,
right.
It was a bunch of clapping and amening and yes, like the cults. I call them the cult gatherings, when they get in and they argue about stuff. But it's empty of fact. It's empty
right.
of science. It's empty of anything that I can take something from. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, I used to go to this thing called African Echoes when I was a kid. And all of the great scholars of our time would speak at African Echoes. Right. So you would have Dr. Henry Clark, Dr. Van Sertima. I could just go on and on and on and on. Dr. Scobie. Mm-hmm. And they would come in, and it would be this community of people that are listening to them. And they're contextualizing history in a way that empowered me and informed me to understand who I was as a human being. None of those people had that ability that was on that stage. So I wasn't learning anything, and I wasn't being empowered by anything at all. So see what I'm saying? So if I go and listen to Henry Clark, if Henry Clark was alive today, and he did a whole lecture on Malcolm X, he did a whole lecture on, the Bible and the Quran, or he did a whole lecture, I was learning something. I was being empowered. I was being defined by that experience with him. That did not do anything. So what I'm saying is we have to have a responsibility when we come out in public and we have these kind of conversations. So that's why I always say, listen, what you think is okay, that's you. What you feel is okay. But when you're talking about these very serious issues, you need to apply yourself differently when you're articulating it to someone else. That's all I'm saying.
So they've decided to do and to build whatever organization they have, right? Whoever put that summit together decided to do that. If we're not getting the quality that we need in terms of people who understand the issues that are impacting
absolutely.
us,
it doesn't do us any good.
It doesn't do us any good. And so we have to begin to structure our own events.
I agree. Well, let me tell you something.
Right. So
they're doing an ADOS conference in Kentucky.
Right.
They're going to have all of the best minds in the world talking about reparations and wealth gap, racial. It's going to happen, and I'm quite sure there's other places in the country that these kinds of things are happening. That was just not the best example. Okay. You know what I mean? That just was not the best example.
And we have to point it out.
We got to point it out. We have the right to point it out because they're saying
we have an obligation.
They're representing us. Well, you're not.
Right. We have an obligation.
You're absolutely
to
not.
point it out.
And it was just a bunch of babble, and it was a bunch of fake entertainers trying to give people the impression that they're focused on the black condition when they're not. Because the black condition is not about standing up and, engaging in poetry or engaging in a lot of this, like what you think thing. It's about a real deep understanding of how we move our people on these issues and how we fight against the systemic racism and how we outline a future plan to get us past where we've been since 1619. Just put it that way, or the last 50 years. And we have a right to challenge them on that. That's all. And I think that's what Antonio Moore is saying. Hey, listen, you don't get up there to do that.
No.
This is not about entertainment. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Caller, go.
Hey, how y'all guys doing this morning, man? I'm glad I don't have to pay a college loan back to be learning all of this stuff, man. I'll be in debt forever. You guys are great teachers. But the conversation about black faces and black voices, I compare it to like abolitionists versus capitalists who on the abolitionist side speaking about the voice and how they tried to keep Frederick Douglass' voice, from the liberal standpoint, muted. And on the capitalist side, they don't care who they destroy. As long as they're making money, they just want business to go on as usual. So from the abolitionist side, on the black voices, it's going to be more and more crucial the way that we have a mindset that can articulate from a historical perspective and in a way that is on the elementary level that people can truly understand and be effective in getting that message out. Because where we at today, these people are looking to, from the air to the water to everything. They don't care who they destroy. And it's in local government all the way to the White House. And, so when you talk about black voices, as far as Jay-Z, and there's a great comparison between Jay-Z, and I like how you guys put that together, and Byron Allen, because Byron Allen is from an abolitionist standpoint, is like, no. We need to understand what is happening here. The messages that we are receiving are totally detrimental to our community and our environment, because, it's dumbing us down to the point that people can, this guy in the White House can mumble something, and the news media shoot it all through the place, and everybody, it'll be repeated time after time after time. It don't have to be true.
Yeah.
As Byron Allen is saying, no, man, we need to know what's going on with the weather. We need direct messaging, and people need to really critically think about what's happening. So, man, I really appreciate you guys, man. Y'all keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. I
Thank you,
appreciate
my
it, man.
brother.
I appreciate it. Well, it's all right to have these conversations. It's all right to talk about it. Yeah. It's all right to outline, because think about it. When I was growing up, every Sunday I would walk in and hear these great men, right, talk about history, talk about science, talk about politics, talk about governments, and talk about our place in the world. And, and Raheem Singleton said, you have to look at it from this perspective. You're in a different generation than the people in that audience. What you hope that the panel did was spark the minds of our youth, and it's up to them, like Killer Mike said, is to do their own research, gather their own data, and come to their own conclusions. The people at the table willing to produce concrete results, the better. All right, I'm not arguing with that. I'm not going to belabor that. I'm just saying, looking at what they were doing,
right,
looking at what they were saying, they were out of touch with reality.
They were.
And they do have a responsibility. If they're going to take that platform, they do have a responsibility to articulate it correctly.
Absolutely.
Because people trust them. So when they was all jumping up and doing the amen and all of that stuff, I'm like, well, that's counterproductive. That is not. See, the Corporation of White Supremacy, they love that because that's not constructive. See, once you start doing something constructive, then you're a problem.
Right.
See, what Byron Allen is doing is something constructive. Now, don't get me wrong. And here's another thing. I wanted to get back to what Raheem was talking about. I was once of a generation like these young people of today, right?
Right.
I was of another generation. I could have easily said that the generation before me or was out of touch. Right? I could have said that. But luckily, I was in a time in history where I was able to grasp a lot from the older people that was in my community, because we did have a community then, and then transfer that into my personal life and try to evolve through some of those experiences and dialogues that I had. So I had the Nation of Islam. I had the Black Catholic Church. Right. I had a school that was reflective of my community that I went to. I had black men in my neighborhood that aspired to do great things or help me to be great or think great or go beyond where I'm at. And I think that a lot of black men in our community, they're slave catchers now.
Sure.
They're not engaged in trying to educate and empower. What they're doing is using our kids to do terrible things to protect them from going to prison. And that's why the socialization of the gangs that are happening and all of the violence that you see is being pushed by somebody older right? And telling them you go out and cause chaos, you go out and kill, as opposed to you go out and sell Muhammad Speaks, or you go to educate yourself, or you go to speak several.
Right.
Like, for instance, I was telling Gail that when I was about 13, 14 years old, I spoke Arabic. Mm-hmm. So now, if I had to do it all over again, I'm glad I didn't, because it's not my language.
Okay.
But I was taught to speak Arabic. Now, think about it. A young man, older man, taught me to speak Arabic, and I had to take a class every week to speak Arabic. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, so I think we've all dropped the ball. So when I see P. Diddy and all of those guys up there engaged in that maximum sophisticated confusion, because that's what it was, I have to challenge him on it. And I think that's what Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell and Dr. Darity and all of these other young, dynamic thinkers are saying, hey, it's all right, but you got the wrong. You got this all wrong. We need to be focused on what's happening in the Supreme Court. We need to be focused on the policies that have trapped us into poverty. We need to understand what that data is outlining to us now. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think shows like this, what Antonio Moore's doing, we need to work in collaboration with each other.
Absolutely.
To make sure that we are pointing our individual audiences to the best place for them to be fed emotionally, spiritually, and educationally.
Well, I think what we're doing is, that's why I say black radio.
You know, because remember before you were showing me some Antonio Moore stuff, and I said, Kev, I'm really not gonna promote them. Like we talk about some of the issues, but I said I'm not gonna promote them.
Right.
But I think, and I thought about it this morning when you sent me last night what you sent me, and I said, you know what? No, we can't be selfish like that, right? Like if I get information, I've got to be willing to, irrespective of whether or not they reciprocate.
Right.
That's not my my responsibility to tell him what to do. Mm-hmm. My responsibility is to do what I know is best to do. Right. And so if we have a platform and we have an audience of people who we have told that we're going to inform, engage, and empower, then I have to be true to that. Right. And so when I see somebody else who is putting out information, I can't get caught up in my ego and say, well, you know what? They're not about sharing my stuff, so I'm not going to share their stuff. I let them deal with the creator on that.
Right.
I have to look and say, you know what? I've got a group of people who are tuned in. They believe what it is that I'm saying, and I have a responsibility.
Well, they're part of our global universe, too, because when they're looking at this data and diving in deep, we're looking at a whole nother level of data that connects.
Yeah.
And then, just like when we codify the language that we've been codifying, a lot of us are all talking about it.
Right.
So at night, like at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm listening to Professor Truth. And I'm like, whoa. Because they doing another level of the work, right? So if you had Dr. Rashidi talking about the urbanization of Africa, you had Dr. Clark talking about the difference between Malcolm and Martin, and then you had Dr. Scobie talking about. So they all were working in conjunction with each other, and they were all sharing information. So every book that they've written, when I went to Africa with Dr. Jeffries, right, we used to have deep conversations when I was a young man. I knew when I was a young man. Yeah. I would be in Harlem. I would be there and I would be listening to them, and then I would go and I would have some coffee and smoke a joint. When I was a kid, come on, everybody, come on, guys, we got to grow. So I would be listening to them. And then one day we were in Africa, and I'm walking down, in Accra, and I'm with Dr. Jeffries. He said, Kevin, this is what this is all about. Introducing the fact that Black Americans, Foundation Americans, Africans, right? We have something great that we gave to the world.
Right.
We've given something to America, but we have something great that we gave to the world. And that had an impact on me. Yeah. Man, know thyself.
Absolutely.
So when I used to see all of this stuff on TV, it was funny. I think it was Dr. Smalls, and we laughed. He says, Kevin, they don't even want to give us credit for being great scientists. No. They don't want to even give us credit for being the creators of medicine. They don't want to do anything. So what they did is they made a movie that somebody came from, what is the name of the movie, guys? Somebody came from the sky and built the pyramids.
Right.
I said, but I was a young man. They had a great influence on me. Yeah. So when I see frauds, I can identify a fraud just like that. I can smell them like a dirty rat. I can be like, that's a fraud. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's trying to emotionalize something without understanding his responsibility is not to emotionalize, but to be responsible for what comes out of his mouth.
Right.
You know, come on.
So no more black faces without black voices.
I like that, man.
No more.
I like that.
No more.
I like that.
So listen, man. I was troubled, and I know, and Diane, I know you're watching. You know, you send a lot of stuff for me to queue up for the show.
As long as you don't inhale, Kevin. He said.
I know. But as I was queuing it up, I started getting pinged, and I gotta say this, right? So
That's
we
funny.
we always get asked, or you know, from time to time we get asked, what are we doing? And you get on me all the time when I say, you know, I say, well, you know, what's the solution? What's the solution? What are you doing, Eric? What are you doing, Kevin? You know, we need people doing more than just talking. And we're not just talking, we're building. Every day we're building, right? And so I got tagged, and I think you did too, in what went on at the council meeting.
Oh, yeah, yesterday. Yeah.
Right. So they said, oh, you know, you need to reach out to Kevin, you need to reach out to Eric, and they suggested a couple other people too.
Okay.
And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? The platform that we're building is exactly for that. For folks who are in the community and you are trying to do, or in fact doing good work, and you're being thwarted by a power structure, and you need to have your voice amplified, or
Right.
whatever it is you're doing,
Right.
amplified.
Right.
Right? That's all we're there for.
Right.
To just amplify.
Amplify, right,
Right?
right.
To, you know, if we can be the wind beneath your wing to get you going a little further, right? And so with that, Sister Munira Boumani yesterday went to speak before the council regarding her concerns, and was escorted out by the police. And she was put in a chokehold, is my understanding.
Oh, what?
A chokehold, right? Male officer, wrapped his forearm around her neck to escort her forcefully out of the council chambers. Now, we talk about, and we've talked about it for over 2 years now, a culture. A culture that exists down there. Well, you know, before I go on, because I have
good.
some video.
Okay, you have some video? Okay.
I
So
do.
you know you got me like in another space now. So go ahead. Let me go ahead. Cause
Wusa.
Musa.
Wusa. I'm going to play the video, and then we'll be back and we'll discuss
Okay,
this.
no problem.
I cannot understand a council person telling somebody that, and you cannot justify a person that's name is on the list to, you know, because you have to sign up to speak. For those of you who don't know, when you speak at these meetings, you do sign up prior to speaking. But her name is on the list, Munira Boumani. It's on the list to speak. And when she get up to the mic, the council person said, well, I just decided today that I wanted to ban her. Okay, so why didn't you decide today to serve her with a ban letter? Or let her forewarn? Like, that is not how business is done. You don't wait till a person get to a meeting to let them know that, oh, hey, you know you can't speak because you've been banned. That is not, even the judges in the judicial system. When you go and file a restraining order, a temporary restraining order, or whatever kind of order, even that judge served the other party with papers so that they can be aware and knowledgeable of what's happening. You don't spring on somebody at that moment of them saying their name when they get to the mic after they've been called to speak, apparently because their name is on this list right here to speak. It was Councilman Gonzalez. Councilman Gonzalez was the one, and he said that he just decided today. Well, that is not, you don't justify deciding today that you're going to ban somebody from speaking after they signed up to speak. When he called the police officer up, the police officer, a male, let me just add to that, a male police officer, and I don't care what Munira's sexual orientation is, she's still a female. She was born a female. And you're a male and you wrap your arms around her neck and have her in the chokehold is so unacceptable. Munira, I hope that you take this to the next level and file a suit because that is unacceptable.
There's commotion in the city council, in city council chambers. They will not. Yeah.
Let her walk out by herself, please. We're going to let her walk out by
This is not right.
Tax dollars at work. People were allowed to speak at the podium. They signed up, but they were tossed out by the police after city council members sicked the police on them, which is a habit of council members, and the ACLU was involved previously before, but you guys see how it goes down in council chambers for yourself live. Hashtag hold the lies. Hashtag cell phone democracy works.
So, there was another video, Kevin, that I had, but I thought I queued it up, but apparently I didn't. But what it was the video in 2010, I believe it was, when Cory Booker was mayor, and the police were summoned at a council meeting where Cory tried to seat Shanique Spates on the council.
Yeah.
And the current council president, Mildred Crump, stood behind the podium and asked, were we criminals? Where's the justice? Talked about the fact that the mayor, then Cory Booker, was dividing the city, right? And now they sit and are doing the exact same thing to the electorate, to the public, that they have. And we talked about the Gestapo. We talked about it all. And thank you, Alan. It wasn't Gonzalez. It was Quintana that did this. That banned a resident, a voter, a taxpayer from speaking at a public meeting. Kids are being poisoned. Senior citizens are being poisoned. We have a government that has lied to us repeatedly and continues to lie to us. You have folks who want answers. You have an administration that has refused to have a public meeting about it. What is the recourse?
Well, let me just say this to you. I didn't want to look at this. This was sent to me late last night. And to tell you the truth, I wasn't in a very good space to look at that kind of stuff because we talk about this every day. And sometimes, even I, as mentally ill as I am, have to detach from it because, because we laugh about that. Everything that happened in that clip that you showed me, we deserve. We deserve every bit of it. We deserve it. The silent majority that is allowing that to happen, right, is complicit in what we saw yesterday. We all know legally that they can't stop her from speaking before the council. That's been qualified already. Constitutionally, it's been qualified. So they had no right to do that. But the mere fact that they used the police in that manner just scares the hell out of me. The mere fact that they believe that they had the authority and the right to tell a taxpayer and a woman and to treat that woman that way, that's like, no matter what her sexual orientation is, was criminal at best. But we deserve every bit of it. Not her personally, but we deserve it. They have no respect for us. They don't value us. And guess what? They don't have to do anything for us because they're still there and we have not kicked them off the island.
Keep talking.
So that's a problem for me.
Hello?
So I don't even know what to say because I got to stay focused because I'll lose my temper and I don't want to lose my temper today.
Yeah, I'll call you back.
But I got to tell you something. I am astounded by what I just saw. But I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked. This is what we've been talking about for the last several years on this show. And guess what? We deserve everything because we allow them to disrespect us every day. But here's the thing that I found interesting in that clip. All of those people that were down there in that audience, I've heard people say, let her walk out on her own. I saw women stand up to try to defend her. But everybody that was in that audience should have tore that place up.
Yeah.
But they saw themselves different than her.
Yes, they did. They sat there.
They sat there. They saw herself different.
They were very polite.
They were very polite.
As that was going on.
And then when the guy got up, he said, well, moving past what Manira did. Somebody that's been down there every day, facts to have a discussion. So I'm very upset about it, but I'm not surprised by it. But they have no respect for us.
They have contempt. For us, Kevin. Let's be clear.
Contempt. Now, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Would they have done that to you and I?
Nope. I guarantee you, if I went down there